first 2-3 years of Zymeworks, in quite transparency, was, all right, if I do a good enough job, maybe someone will give me my next opportunity. Maybe I will now get a real job. And I think it was in the 3rd or 4th year that I'm like, wait, this is the real job.
Yeah.
I am in the real job. Oh crap.
Hi, welcome to this episode of Founders in the Wild. I'm your host, Dave Mori. Today we're in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. My guest is Ali Tehrani. He is the co-founder and former CEO and president of Zymeworks, Vancouver-based biotech company.
Hi everyone, I'm really glad to be here. I'm glad to walk in this beautiful day and have a discussion with you and see where that goes. In entrepreneurship, do you have to look really far? Or is everything you need right there where you need it? This discussion of where we're walking right now, should I start my company in Boston, Cambridge, San Francisco, Silicon Valley? Am I in a disadvantage to do it in Vancouver? You know what's interesting in the biotech space? In the last 8 months, there have been 3 multi-billion-dollar exits out of Canada, out of BC, in biotech alone. So sometimes everything you need is right next to you, but maybe you're not looking at it. Maybe you're not looking for it because you're so busy looking away from it.
Well, I think, we grow up hearing these other places where they're kind of meccas, but you've been a pioneer in the space for the last 20 years, and I think you've been able to see the progression and the growth. Would you have thought that it would be like this when you first started?
Not a chance. When I started, it started with the notion that I don't think anyone's going to hire me. I'm finishing grad school. I have a PhD in purple non-sulfur photosynthetic bacteria, which all of maybe 8 people in the world, I'm exaggerating, care about. But I have a PhD in microbiology and immunology, except I'm highly specialized. So if you put what I just said when my thesis was on a resume and you send it to a bunch of biotech companies and pharma, they're like, get out of here. Like, we are in drug design. What do you know about drug design? And then I looked at all my peers, and my peers were also becoming extremely specialized, having spent 5, 6, 7 years getting a PhD, and then they kind of go, what now? Like, I'm ready to really take on the world, but the world is not going to give me a shot. So looking at that pattern, I knew I had to do something for me. And the first 2-3 years of Zymeworks, in quite transparency, was, all right, if I do a good enough job, maybe someone will give me my next opportunity. Maybe I will now get a real job. And I think it was in the 3rd or 4th year that I'm like, wait, this is the real job.
Yeah.
I am in the real job. Oh crap. And now you start taking that perspective of, again, it's right here. Why am I looking over there when I have a real opportunity right in front of me? And I'm so busy looking past it that I'm missing. So then it sort of, the engine started to fire, and I'm like, I'm going to give 220% of my life to making something different.
Yeah.
And different has a sort of a triple bottom line to it. Different for investors, different for the team that works here, and different in terms of the impact you're going to make. And you can't put an or between those. You have to put an and there. That's the complexity. Can you do something for investors and for your team and for the general world? And if you kind of put that difficult challenge there, then you get to work. And you build culture, you build a safe place. In fact, I don't know why even we say safe place, because what's the opposite? A dangerous place? So I wanted to build a place where people were excited to get out of bed. not get up and go, yeah, all right, great paycheck, but yeah.
And did you have that intention right from the very beginning?
I did.
Or was that something that you kind of developed over time through observing other leaders? And
When I sit back and think about it, it's because I'm a single child. And as a single child, you either turn into a brat or you desire a family, a big family. So I always looked at the people around me not as employees or my team. Some of this lingo that is used to maybe unconsciously show dominance. I looked at them truly as my extended family. I looked at them as people that were really important to me.
mm-hmm.
So I took that mentality of, I need to take care of them. Whether they want to be taken care of or not, I've asked them to join my crazy idea. They've said yes. Wow. So now, how do I return that trust? How do I return that initiative? So you build a work environment where people they can be the best. They can be. I don't want to, it sounds like the Marines. But if you think of leadership as a way to bring the best out of people versus push them to sort of fully accelerate them towards maximum productivity, it's a fine line between that. But when people, you find their best, they're motivated, they're excited, they are challenged, and oftentimes they don't ask for massive compensations. When someone is asking for a big compensation, it's usually because they are compensating for the lack of something else. Think about like in great marriages, relationships, when you're truly in sync, a person goes, I don't need gifts. I don't need luxury crap. I'm just glad we're together. But when you're not, they're like, so, haven't gotten anything in a while. What's going on? We forget about these things. We think real life is separated from work. But we're human beings. How can we be one person at home and another person in the office? And because this was my first job, I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
So what were I going to bring to the table? My only thing I had, which is logic, rationale, real life. When I started Zymeworks, I was like 32.
And at that point, you had only done studies up to that point.
That's the only thing I've ever done. I had started organizations just like many other people, many other students. They're either part of student bodies. I created my own student organizations. But Zymeworks was my real first job.
So let's go back to that. So you're in school. You mentioned you had something unique. You had something you wanted to do. Was this something that you funded from grants? Did you go around to family and friends and ask for funding? How did you get this off the ground?
When I came to Canada, I didn't know a single soul. Not even one person. In fact, the first week that I came from Massachusetts, from Boston, grown person, I'm not ashamed to say it, I think I actually cried. Sitting sort of in a tiny little cheap room going, what have I done? What have I really done? What is this? Why am I here? I've left my friends, I've left my family. Why am I here? And then the week after, it sort of clicked that, wait. You're playing into your emotions. Get up. You're here for a purpose, for a job, do it. So then, the lack of friends, family, anyone to invest, that was not there. Now, some people look at that and they go, okay, so where are you going to get money? Those same student organizations that I started gave me profile, exposure, opportunity. So when I had the idea of Zymeworks, I already had 2 or 3 people that I can at least go and say, first, crazy check this for me, my nuts. And second, can you give me my next sort of break? Yeah. And you never know, just by asking what could come. Sometimes someone will go, I'm actually interested, or I can make 2 phone calls for you. And one of the best things that we do have in Vancouver, which is very unique, is people are willing to support underdogs.
Yes.
They don't fight underdogs. They actually go, sure, happy to make a phone call. I had suddenly people calling CEOs, executives in big companies going, hey, do you want to talk to Ali for a second? And as a young kid, you kind of go in front of these people like, oh my God, like, look where I'm sitting, who I'm talking to. But that's how the ball rolls, and eventually 2 or 3 people go, I kind of like your idea. Important thing at that stage is it's incredibly important to be a storyteller, not BSer. Let me be clear. When you're an architect, when you are a real estate developer, you take a bunch of people with you and you point to an empty lot, to something that is completely desolate and probably crap, and go, I would like you to close your eyes and I would like you to imagine 5 buildings, some condos, a shopping district, 2 restaurants, maybe it's right by the water and we create a playground. The power of getting someone to imagine is incredibly important in the founding team. Yeah. What we don't have anymore these days is probably what you and I grew up with, which is our parents or grandparents, when we're going to bed, telling us stories. Not reading, telling us a story. Yeah. We didn't have streaming technologies or audio this and I don't know, the other thing. We didn't have any of those. I remember I used to be able to just lie on my grandmother's lap and she would have like 60, 70 stories to tell me. Stories of princesses and princes and this and that. Story aside, it was the power of being able to get someone to immerse themselves in something that was not there. Yeah. And today you have podcasts, right? And even this podcast where you're seeing us, but there are people who you can't see and they can speak to you and it clicks. Yeah. Founders need to really hone in that ability to sit with someone without slides, without 70, 80 pages of documents, without computers, and go, let me tell you what my idea is. And then we can go to slides. We can go there for details. We can go there for everything else you want to see in the case of due diligence. But let me tell you what we do. Have you heard Warren Buffett's due diligence process? You know that he and people are like, so did you spend hours and hours in all these businesses that you invested in? He's like, no, I actually never read the business plans. I would go walk through a plant, walk through a store, talk to the people, and then if I decide to do it, I'd talk to Charlie, and Charlie would, look at the paperwork, and then we go from there.
Annual reports.
And we're good, right? That is that ability to have someone exude trust, tell a story. No investor will go, you need to prove to me that everything is perfectly there. Otherwise, it's not a startup.
So Ali, take us back to early days. How did you go about funding the business? How did you stretch the dollars, right? So many entrepreneurs are not as judicious around kind of pinching their pennies in the early days. Maybe tell us some of the early stories. I heard from some of your colleagues that you had some creative approaches to stretch those dollars.
So, when you grow up not having money, and you have to work really hard for every aspect of it, you start to appreciate it in a different way. And because I didn't have money growing up, I always was making a deal. And when the first set of investments came into Zymeworks from 3 individuals, first one lesson was, we're not just investing, we're becoming a partner, a co-founder. That's how they refer to themselves. Second is, I knew how hard it was to get that money, so I wanted to make sure that it just simply didn't go away. So when we had to buy furniture, when we had to buy computers, when we had to buy anything, there was always an extra ask. There was always if you were buying 2 computers, can you throw in a keyboard? If you're buying 2 monitors, can you throw in a mouse? And you'd be shocked how many times people said yes. Once I had to buy a couch for the office, and I pretended my boss, the CEO, had given me the task to go buy the couch, and I made a fake phone call to myself, saying that, hey, I'm here, this gentleman says the couch is $500, what do you want me to do? What? I only have $400, and then I kind of went through this drama, and I looked at the person, I'm like, look, you're gonna get me into trouble. Like, I might not be able to go, so can you do me a solid and give it to me for $400? The person's like, your boss is an a-hole. I'm like, yeah, what an a-hole. Just can't, we all have those bosses. It's like, okay, I can do this for you. And, I'm like, great. And, I got a couch from Brick or whatever it is for $400 and walked out. Somewhere along the line, as more investment dollars and more money was given to us, you start to, quite honestly, lose sight of those early days and how important it is to think of every dollar as your last dollar. But taking an investment by someone really seriously and not as grant money, not as entitled, is very important. You're asking someone to give their money to you. Imagine if the tables were turned and someone was asking you to give your money to something else. What would you want to see? How protective of that money would you be? Yeah. If a bank calls me up and says, we're taking an extra $20 off of your account and we're going to do something good with them, I'm like, whoa, hey, my $20. Investments, shareholder money is not, there's no secret printer that a shareholder, a group of people call shareholders, print and they go, okay, this is not monopoly money. They worked hard too for their money. They had to earn that money. And now if they're giving it to you, every day you have to think about, how do I make $3, $4, $5 of value for every dollar that I was received? And how do I give it back? In the early days, one of my mistakes was, you would get the investment and you go, great, I got the investment, job done. Yesterday, or the day before, I was asking someone who wants to be a CEO, what's the job of a CEO? And the person said to me, my job would be to constantly raise money. Like, that's not the job of a CEO. There's other titles for that. And the mentality that goes with it is the wrong mentality, because you think like you have to find money and take it. Your job is to figure out, put a vision, put strategy, put a team together to create value, that triple bottom line that I was talking about. If you want to feel accomplished, you give the money that you took back, hopefully with a return. You make sure that the people that did the job loved the job, and the lives you're impacting would go on and never know you, but go, I'm really grateful someone did this. It could be a great car, it could be a drug, it could be an app, but it has to have that, I'm really glad someone did this. As opposed to, fantastic, we created social media, whatever it is, and our kids now are hooked, or they're increasing the rate of suicide because of the crap that goes on Instagram or TikTok. So if I could pass that on, anyone who is thinking about being a founder of technology, biotech, whatever, don't think just tomorrow, think 10 years ahead. And imagine not year 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, but a day like a Tuesday in year 2033, 2034. What are you doing? How are you interacting with the world? Your family, your loved ones, your kids, the people that you worked in the last 10 years with, how are they looking at you? Would they work with you again? Or when your name comes up, they go, no. One of the worst things that could happen is a question is asked from someone, hey, would you work with Dave again? Yes. Or no. Which one do you want to be?
Yeah.
And remembering that is more valuable than all the money you made and all the crap you bought and all the homes that you had. All the homes and all that crap, they come and go. As soon as you pass away, someone else takes them. The only thing that lasts is your name.
A legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned some things around what a CEO is going to do. One of the things that I in looking at your journey, right? You started just yourself, maybe a couple of others. You grew that company prior to stepping back as the CEO. You grew that to probably, what was it, 500, over 500?
650.
There must have been learnings, right? All entrepreneurs hiring at different stages of the growth of the business. There's different people that could be involved. You must have had some good learnings around how to hire and recruit very talented people. Maybe if you could share some of your kind of wisdom in growing a team and having everyone kind of, I guess, march to the same beat as the CEO, the visionary.
I was really lucky to work with some exceptionally talented people. One of the big mistakes that, in thinking back, people make is they try to surround themselves or get a team in one or two ways. Either a team that will never challenge them and always obey them, or they hire one phenotype, one kind of people that are all the alpha types, as we say. And what life has shown is that if you go with the latter, if you just have alphas, you're just going to get people just butting heads all the time because they all want to lead. And eventually you have a chariot with a whole bunch of people pulling it in a different direction. The chariot is meant to go in one direction. A boat is supposed to go in one direction. And if you have 10 really smart, really athletic, really motivated, rowing in different directions, you're just going to go in circles. So, it is a huge mistake to be insecure and try to hire people or surround yourself with people that will never challenge you, will never disagree with you, will always obey you. That's called a dictatorship. And B, if you decide to hire or go with my recommendation of really talented people, make sure that you look at the spectrum of leadership, the spectrum of accomplished people. On one side, you have people who are not afraid to take on challenges. You throw a challenge in front of them, they may react, but then they go, all right, give me some time, let me think through it, and I'll come up with a way to get and make it happen. The other side of the spectrum are people who don't necessarily have that inclination. They don't want to look at a challenge, but when presented with a plan, they will flawlessly deliver. They're meticulous. They will look at every detail. They will look at every detail 5 times. The people that look at a challenge or a problem often are not detail oriented. They are sort of at the 40,000 foot level. They kind of look at the moon somewhere here and they go, how do we go to the moon? But then after you figure out that the challenge is going to the moon and some of the details, someone else has to come in and go, all right, let's figure out the steps, all right? And over my 18, 20 years, I got to experience what happens with different formulas. This is what we call delegation. This is where you have to understand that the maestro of an orchestra is not the best violinist, is not the best pianist, is not the best of anything. She or he knows how to make all of them play off of the same music sheet, to the same tempo, to the same perfection. But everyone has a role. The drummer may just get 2 bumps in a song. The violinist may play 75% of the song. The bassoon may do 2, blows. Your job is to figure out how to make music.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out that a great piece of classical music does not have everyone playing at all times the same equal amounts. But, when we've all been to a great classical concert and you can close your eyes and get lost in that song, you're not thinking about, I wanted more flute there. How come they didn't give me more flute? Missing flute.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm leaving going, wow, that was amazing. So as founders, you have to be architects. You have to be chefs. You're not there to burn people out. You're not there to go, it's all about the dollars. You're there for that moment where the musician, the audience, and you, and every person that paid for it goes, that was worth it.
So can you share any advice for identifying people that are on that spectrum that you were describing? And it's hard to often, read that on a resume. But
in fact, you will never read it on a resume.
But maybe through interviews, or do you have any, experience? Did you put them on kind of on the job kind of trial, contract training, things like that?
You have to have a sort of a conversation like this. I often say that CVs open the door for a conversation. The actual conversation has to happen of, one, you have to be clear what you need. And you have to communicate to to the person you're considering, this is what I need. This is where I need you to be, and this is how much it's going to be. We have to be on the same page. If you feel like you need more attention, more involvement where you are in your journey, and it's not a fit here, you're gonna actually disrupt. In sports worlds, how many times your favorite sports teams signed an incredibly talented person that backfired? The team had a dynamic to it, had a gel, they were almost at the playoffs or winning, and they thought the only thing that was missing was the superstar. You throw the superstar in there, it actually gets worse. And this is where the coach didn't realize, or the team owners didn't realize, that you're plugging a hole, not adding a name. So, first challenge is know what your need is. Know, in that sort of orchestra analogy, what you're trying to accomplish. It's not about, this person worked at this brand name, and if I bring them in, the brand somehow is going to get me more dollars, or the brand somehow, because they worked at this big whatever, it's going to change me. If any of, say, businesses that I'm involved with, if Elon Musk calls and goes, I'm happy for you to put me anywhere, and for me to go, it's Elon Musk. If I just said, this business has Elon Musk, it's just going to take off. That's a mistake. Sometimes the person without the brand is more important to the need that you have than the person with the brand. And the next thing you want to look for is ego. If you're having a conversation and you pick up on little signs of ego, if you pick up on lack of humility, if you pick up on lack of empathy, if you pick up lack of authenticity, I don't care who you are, it's not going to work out. These are sort of the basics of And in interviews, at some point I would just stop with okay, tell me about this part of your CV and this part of your CV. I'm just like, what are you reading now? Do you read? I do read, and it's okay if you're like, I haven't read a book in a while. Do you watch movies? What movie do you watch? What was the last thing you watched? Why did you enjoy it? I don't care about the answer. I just want to hear you talk. I would ask like a stupid question of, so do you like vanilla or chocolate ice cream? And a lot of people would think like I was looking for an answer.
It's the right answer.
They're like, what is it? And they would ask people, what should I say? What does he like? and I didn't care. Sometimes people are like, I don't like ice cream. Okay, what do you like? What do you do? Because if we can't relate, what are we talking about? A lot of these factors that, it's a funny thing, we were talking about this. When you're out there, when you're single and you go on dates and you want to find the love of your life or your partner or whatever it is, what do you want to know about them? How is that any different? And then asking someone to join your team.
Yeah.
To be a team member of the team you are a part of.
Yeah, you see them even more than a lot of the times than your spouse.
How's that any different? You're dating them.
Yeah.
How's that? What's the process of dating? I mean, what is a good old classic saying about dating? The person you are thinking about marrying, go on a road trip together. Just go see what happens if you have to sit in a car for 5 hours. Are you going to kill each other? Are you going to fight? Or do you bond and do you get to be closer? There is no interviewing for dummies. There is no formula. It's just...
Can you tell me, you got to do something that many entrepreneurs strive to, or at least they think at some point I'd love to sell my business or take my business public. I'm sure you had discussions around both, but then you were able to take Zymeworks public. Could you talk us through that? I mean, this is something very big in any entrepreneur's life.
So on the bucket list, you may remember this, but some of the people that are listening to this or watching this may not. There was a movie called Trading Places. You know, the Eddie Murphy movie?
Yes.
That was like one of my all-time, funniest movies. And there's a scene where they are on the balcony and supposedly the New York Stock Exchange, but it happened in Chicago, and they're ringing the bell and they go public. And I always watch that and I go, what would it be like to do that? So when I got to actually be on that balcony, ring the bell, look at the things you only see on TV, it was the most surreal moment of my life, because you're like, what am I doing? I'm in that scene in that movie doing that. That's a good part. I will talk about going public in two contexts. One, what I know now, and two, what it was in the context of Zymeworks. What I know now and what I recommend to everyone about the notion of going public is going public is not an exit for you as the founder. It's not an exit for you as the dreamer, as the sort of the parent to the business or to the company or to the team. What it does, it gives all the investors, the shareholders, especially the ones that were helping you from the beginning, an opportunity to get their money back. That's the good part. For you, what it really means is now you don't have a select group of shareholders that you built a relationship with, you built trust with, you built a rapport with. Now you have unknown algorithms, people all around the world that have one objective: money. Everyone else that came in and bought your stock before probably believed in that triple bottom line that I was talking about. As soon as you go public, only thing that you are is a vehicle, or the lack thereof, to make money. There was an instant when Zymeworks' share price was at its highest, absolute highest. We were like 2-3 billion market cap. And I remember someone sent me a screen capture of a tweet, and someone had written, a day trader, I have no idea what they do, but I love them. And you kind of take a step back here, like, okay, is that what we are? You kind of feel like an object. You feel like something that is not human. So for you as the founder, for you as the person who's gotten it there, the day after becoming a public company, you have to start to think differently. You have to think that now I'm accountable to a group of people that will buy or sell my stock based on a whole other factors that has nothing to do with me. Putin decides to invade, Ukraine, my share price goes down. And then a whole bunch of other people call you and they go, why is your share price down? I'm like, I didn't do anything. I'm the same company as I was yesterday. You can't have a bad day. You can't dress differently. I was at times, I would wear a suit and then decide to wear a different tie and people go, he's wearing a different tie. What does that mean? You can't have a terrible day. And also, the day after you go public, you just can't leave. Because people go, well, wait, we decided to invest in this company, this entity, with this team and this group. If the person is leaving, that means something's wrong. So on one hand, on paper, on a screen, you see your net worth be incredible. Oh my God, look how much I'm worth. But you can't sell. If you sell, people go, why'd you sell?
Yeah. Something's wrong.
Something's wrong. Yeah. Why are you selling? You can sell a little bit, tiny bit, almost like a crumb. But if you sell too much, people are like, oh.
Yeah.
And then there's legal filings, and then there is this, and there's that. And you can't even do podcasts like this. Because people go, has that been cleared by lawyers? You cease to exist. So be careful about the notion of going public. Be very clear. Be very, very clear. And one of the best things you can do is before going public, you can put a succession plan in place. You can put people who actually love this in place to do this.
Yeah, well, tell us about that. So, there was likely a transition plan in place. Can you tell us?
Yeah, for me, in hindsight, it was a little too late. I knew early on that everything that I told you was going to drive me crazy. But you also feel responsible and committed. So I put those plans into motion too late. I forgot one of the best pieces of advice that Jerry Seinfeld gave to everyone on the last day of his show. And they're like, they would have offered you $5 million an episode for the next 3 years. And he said, I'd rather go out on a high than to overstay my welcome. For me, I now know this, and that's why I pass it on. I exited, the company is still around, they have a management team, they're going on, they're doing their thing. But in many respects, in total transparency, I may have overstayed my welcome. I may have not realized where my skills were and the limitations of my skill were and the balance with my life was and the love of my family and my kids and my wife. You can be a CEO, you can be a husband or a wife, you can be a parent, but you can only be 2 out of 3. One of them has to go. And there is no exception to that rule. If the only way is when parent portion is your kids have left, like they're high schoolers or they're college students, which in essence makes you not a parent anymore, more like a was parent. But if you're a family person, if you're a mom, if you're a dad that loves kids, especially at the young age, preteen, and you love your partner, husband or wife, and you also want to be an executive, decide which one you're willing to sacrifice. Because one of them is going to suffer. You notice that a lot of people that are in their second or third marriages do really well in the second marriage, and they stay together for a while. And you go, why? What's so different between this? They're like, I now know.
Yeah, I made a decision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No one in their right mind, I say this, is like, imagine you meet someone that you're really attracted to and you go, listen, why don't we hang out, date for 5-6 months a year, and then after that, I will see you for 1 or 2 hours every night, 1 or 2 hours every weekend. I will be very stressed, and maybe we take a vacation, for 2 weeks a year.
Yeah.
Want to get married?
Maybe.
Maybe. Want to get married? Want to do this?
I think you just described what my partner went through.
Yeah. Well, you want to do this?
Yeah.
And you go, whoa. So, public life, when you talk about IPO, the allure of money at the sacrifice of giving up your loved ones.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
So now you've done it. So the same personality type that will kind of, I guess, lend itself to going and starting a company is also, I find at least, because I'm basically, I can say that I'm falling victim to this. You think that you can do all three things, right? Just like anything in business, I can create a plan and try and execute. But I think I've also struggled with what you just described and come out successfully with my wife, right? And we are still together, but we've not always had we've had ups and downs because of what you just described. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts around how to really look at this in a healthy way, right? Because you seem very healthy. We've had discussions. You seem like you're in a very good place, but it probably took time to get there. You had to make conscious decisions.
It took a lot of time. It took a lot of time. It took, we talked about earlier on about getting to know yourself and what you want. My advice, my recommendation is don't take yourself, don't take anyone in your life for granted. Don't assume that they will always be there, you will always have your health. The midlife crisis. I didn't realize what that meant till I sat down and thought about it. And what it is you are in a crisis of thinking that you're going to miss out. Oh my God, I'm like 55, 60, whatever it is, and I always wanted to go on this trip or buy this or do that, and I am now going to miss out, so I'm going to be in this crisis mode, I'm going to do it now. How awesome would it be if you didn't have to get to that crisis mode?
Yes.
And if you have sort of a bucket list, priority list, I mean, great people always are told to prioritize. Why can't you do the same thing for your life? And if you kind of sit back and go, I've always wanted to see this, I've always wanted to experience this, I've always wanted to do this, do it sooner rather than later, because you can't assume you'll always have your health. You can't assume you can always do it with the people you love. I've been through incredible cities as part of the IPO, as part of my job, but I did it alone. My wife here would go, oh, you're going to Berlin, you're going to have a blast. I'm like, no, not without you. I don't want to go walk around by myself and go, hello, Berlin. Like, no, I'll just sit in my hotel. And people are like, what? I'm like, I want to enjoy it with someone. When you have a great bottle of wine, you're either the person that opens it, sit by yourself and drink by yourself, or you can't wait to share it with someone and share notes. So when you're thinking about these things, make sure you don't assume you always have time. Make sure you don't assume the person you love will always be around. And prioritize things. And sometimes jobs are an enabler of the bucket list. Sometimes jobs are the bucket list. But not confusing them is really important. And if you're really, really about your job, you're going to hate me for this, you probably don't need to have a family or shouldn't have to have a family. Don't be that mom or dad that parents through FaceTime or a gift. Being a mom is the toughest job in this world, bar none. There's nothing tougher than being a mom. And being a dad, co-pilot, being there with empathy for a son, for a daughter, is incredibly important. So you can choose to be an executive, you can choose to be in the highest elements of the corporate world, but make sure that doesn't come at the sacrifice of a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old that wants a hug. Your partner that wants, in the sickness and in health, the sickness part, make sure you're not dragging someone down. And anyone that worked at Zymeworks knew that family comes first. And they felt safe to bring their kids to work. They knew that everyone loved kids. I created Zymeworks, or at least I left the Zymeworks, that people loved coming to work. Outside of the therapeutics and tackling cancer and people doing well, that's my happy place. And my wife, my kids, just like anyone else's wife and kids, we're important. I get married once. I have one set of kids once. I go public once. Not twice, not 3 times. And when I left, people were like, aren't you excited to do it again? I'm like, no, hell no. We can't wait to see what you do next. Teach. Ego, the frontal cortex, are you going to take that? Don't you want more? Is our worst enemy. I like nice things too, but I also know my limits.
So you're in a good place right now.
Yes.
What is the future for you? Are you going to start another Zymeworks? Are you?
No, again, I think I've used a few analogies here. The most recent Top Gun movie, in the second one, you see Tom Cruise as a Top Gun instructor, and he's adamant that he will never want to fly another mission. I kind of feel the same, even though I'm nowhere near anything like Tom Cruise in any shape or form. But I feel like the best place I can be is outside of the cockpit, trying to teach people, try to pass wisdom, not even teach, of how to be inside the cockpit. I've had my time. I've done all the things in there. I don't have the ego, the necessity to do it again. I would love to be part of people's journeys. I'd love to enable people to do that. In my capacity at Amplitude Ventures, I'm probably the least VC-like person to be a VC because that's not my background. However, I get to create a portal. I get to create a look inside the VC world. I get to, in some respects, disrupt the VC world.
Tell us about that. What are your ideas? Because my favorite VC, Mark Suster, was both sides of the table. Right now he's on the VC side, but he came from an operating side.
So what I try to do in my small part of the universe as a VC is when we come across companies and sometimes we say no, many times we say no, the no needs context. The no doesn't mean you suck or this was crappy and people walk away feeling depressed. I would have loved to get a laundry list of things to do after I got a no. I would have loved for someone that I felt understood me, stayed in contact and gave me an extra 15, 20 minutes or half an hour here and there to help me get there. So in my little portion of the world, if we get to a no on reviewing an opportunity, and I connected with the story with the entrepreneur, I stay in contact. I say, even though we couldn't give you money from the fund, I can give you my time. I will be there to help you find people. You want to brainstorm, you want a connection, you want a recommendation, I will be there. You may not get dollars, but you get in-kind dollars. And that creates a very busy schedule for me because I sometimes find myself all over the place. In fact, an hour from now, I'm meeting with someone. in that capacity. Someone's like, okay, would you give me half an hour? You know, I need something more. I'm like, great, let's sit down, let's go through it. And I think in the VC world, my objective, my goal is to help an entity move forward, whether that is with dollars or whether that is with connections. I'm trying to do what I hope people would do for me or did for me. And then also, my own sort of small podcast, not like yours, one of the topics I'm going to tackle next is what happens around the VC table at a partner discussion where you're not there, and what do we say about you? And you know, what do we talk about? Like, this is what you think happens, but this is in reality what actually happens. And I'm like those, you know, it was like the magician's code that, you know, you would see this magic trick and you would never know how it was done because magicians had a code of never describing or breaking it down. But now on the internet, people take on these tricks and go, this is what's happening. I'm going to break the code of the VCs. I'm going to actually talk about what VCs talk about.
Oh, this is great. Well, I'll make sure to put that in the notes as soon as you publish.
Yeah, I've got a. I think about what I want to do a little bit like Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart took on big topics in a way that everyone could relate to, and you know, you would walk away from a Jon Stewart show feeling like you had fun and you learned something.
Yes.
And that's what I want to do with my time.
Well, so how can entrepreneurs find you if they want to reach out?
One of my easiest ways through LinkedIn.
Okay.
And send me a message and I will always respond. It may take me an extra little bit of time, but I will respond. I've made it a goal of mine to never leave someone hanging. And the second part of it is, it always works easier if you have something specific in mind. Hey, Ali, I want to talk to you about this. Or I would love your idea about this. Or can we brainstorm about that? I just simply want to meet you is great. It's fantastic. And I will try my best to do that. But I work better when there's a challenge in front of me. I've hit this wall. I'm trying to work through this. Can you lend me a brain cell? Happy to do so. Or I want to meet someone, or I'm trying to get to this person and they are ignoring me. Happy to do so. Doesn't mean I can always make it happen, but I will try.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having spent the time with us today and sharing so many of your insights and learnings.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for doing this. I think this is part of the ecosystem. It's critical that we have these dialogues and see how we change the world.
Thank you.
All right.
As we go through the minefield of
Poop.
Lots of poop.
Well, as my dog would say, delicacy. My dog is like, these are all Michelin star poop, you know.
Yeah,
why don't you bring me here? Because all dogs like goose poop.
Oh, they do.
Oh, and my dog looks at this as like, I don't care what you buy me, just let me loose in the goose poop world.